Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome to another episode of Illustration Masterclass. Today we're going to be looking at the illustrator Sergey Kolesov. Uh, he's got some really awesome art. I believe he did work on the Dishonored series, and I just really dig his work because it's so unique, and his style is kind of all over the place. You'll see what I mean whenever you check out the description box, and you can see the rest of his work. I'm only going to look at a few pieces today. So let's just go ahead and get started. And as usual, I like to zoom out and I like to look at the image from afar and see how readable it is. And the thing that stands out to me immediately is a couple of different things. For one, he has the red over here and he has this red here, and he has these black shapes that are going down like this, right? Kind of going down like this. And so this is kind of an interesting way to organize these two different shape groups. He has this red shape group over here, and then he has this black shape group down here. And you could say, in a sense, that it's actually connected with the shadow shapes that he has, right? But there's a really interesting diagonal-ish shape that's going on here between these characters. And they're kind of counterbalanced by these two red shapes. One is almost in the top right, and then one is in the middle of the left. And then over here, what's interesting is that we have this big white shape, right? So it's interesting to think that if he had put another red shape here, how would that have changed it? Doesn't necessarily mean it would have broke it, but I think that the reason why he didn't put that there is because it would have made the image a little bit too busy, right? So as we zoom into the image, we can begin to see more of the detail. And we can take a close look at this and see, looks like a couple of characters flying through the air. This guy's shooting. He's shooting the gun out of this guy's hand. What I really like about this drawing and what I like about his work is that it feels very much like very elongated, very strange looking in terms of the way that he's drawn these shapes. I mean, they kind of almost remind me of like a kid drawing, especially something like this. I mean, this is not the sort of thing you would typically see in an illustrator's portfolio. I mean, the hand is like basically not even there, right? But you can tell he has a very high degree of understanding of what he's doing. There's also repeating shapes throughout it. We have this kind of like arch here, here, and then up in this top corner that repeat throughout the image, and then you could say it repeats down here. So you could say that this shape kind of carries through here, and it goes through here, which is right in line with the way it is that the rest of the image goes, right? Because we have this kind of converging line, and it goes here, and then it comes down here. And you could say it goes here, comes down into the body, and this is swinging to this way, right? So he's moving the eye through the drawing very deliberately. We can see that also with the gestures of the shapes. The gestures of the shapes are all pointed in a similar direction, right? Even the faces of these two characters on the left and right, they're both looking out to the image. Now if we drop it into black and white, let's take a look and see what it is that we see. Again, it just becomes clearer the way it is that he's decided to organize these shapes. And the best way to understand color is to understand value. And so we're getting a glimpse of the value structure underneath this piece by dropping it into a black and white. And we can start to see that he was very selective with the color of red that he chose for these figures on either side, and in the red on the jacket, as well as the blue as well. None of it is too saturated, so it doesn't draw too much attention to itself, right? Because when we look at this image, we see it as a black and white image, and we can see that he likes to keep the dark values close together, So if we were to put this on a value scale, this would be, 6, 7, 8, somewhere around there. That's what all of this would be. And then the light values, he likes to keep those together, like a 1, a 2, a 3, something like that. So he's organizing his values very well. Let's go ahead and let's move on to the next one. This one I love because it's such a great example of a couple of different things it is that I've talked about on this podcast before, which is that you have these diagonal lines. And notice that they're not completely diagonal. He's not doing this, but he's got them turned slightly, right? The same thing here. And this slight churn that he has to it is very subtle, but it's really important because it creates a sense of something cinematic. And it also gives something to contrast against these very static shapes that we see here in the foreground. We see this cube that's basically just sitting in the air, like this, right? Something like that. And this is a very static shape. It could be perceived as a very boring shape. In other words, if we thought of these diagonals in the background as being completely straight, like if he did them like this, and then if he did another one like this, and he evenly broke up the image, would the image still have the impact that it has? I would say no, it doesn't. We also see the thing that I talk about a lot on here, which is repeating shapes. So we have these circle shapes, right? These black circle shapes that repeat throughout the image. We also see white circle shapes. And then we see these circle shapes churned into ellipses, right? If we look closer, let's see if we can see other circle shapes. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much where he puts them now. Um, there's other things going on in this image which are also very subtle. These red triangles that are pointing up. If we drop this into black, again, we can start to see how it is that he organizes these values together in a way that's very interesting. Because you have these black shapes that are basically making a circle around this figure. And this figure, as we get in closer, we can see is very it's contrasting against the rest of the environment. Obviously because it's a figure and it's the only figure in the environment. But we can also see that it's got some really dark values in here, which are very similar to these values, right? And it's not a coincidence that this figure is put right next to these circle shapes, right? That are very light. And so they're creating they're helping create the silhouette of this figure by putting them next to one another. It's helping create a sense of contrast. Very cool piece. Let's go ahead and let's move on to the next one. This is the stuff that I really love about his work, and in all honesty, it's kind of intimidating to try to understand because you can tell he has such a strong understanding of color and the way that he likes to play with color. He's got these light blues here, and then these reds. So we could say that the light source could be a light blue, and it's creating this very exaggerated red shadow shapes. And then he's throwing in some yellow and some pink as these transitions, which is really cool. Yeah, I mean, you can tell just from the way it is that he's drawn this that he's really a master of his craft. Like, the guy knows how to create an image. And if we drop it into black and white, again, we can more closely see how it is that he organized his values. So even though when we look at it in color, it looks like the color range is all over the place, but when we look at it in terms of the value, the actual values, the black and white values, and the gradation between them, we can see that they're very well organized. And that's one of the key things that you want to understand about color is that um, each color has to be adjusted. If you want to do something like this, each color has to be adjusted in order to fit with the value structure of everything else. So for example, this yellow is very bright, right? And he's tempering it down by putting it next to this red, and he's letting it mix in a little bit with this red and with this pink. And he's also got some great brushwork going on. He's very loose with his brushes. And then, like I said, if we turn this back on, we can see that this yellow here is one of the brightest shapes on here. And it's just about as bright as this blue. But in order to keep these consistent, he had to dumb down this yellow in order for it to be in the same value range as this blue highlight here. So we got one more. Let's go ahead and let's take a look at it. Yeah, this is the stuff it is that I love. I love stuff that just is totally off the wall. His work is so awesome, and I would love to chat with this guy sometime. So if you're watching, I'd love to interview you on my podcast. But yeah, I mean, he's not afraid to mix these different ways of working. He's known for the stuff he's done on Dishonored, I believe, but he's not afraid to take risks with what it is that he's doing and really push his style in different ways. You know, he's got this 3D render, looks like what's going on, and then he's got this very two-dimensional render of this figure. And this figure has a shadow, it has a light hitting it, and then it has a base color. But then we see this other figure that is completely cartoonish, completely cartoonish. There's other things going on here. There's a lot of patterns being used. There's a lot of patterns in the red, right? This red stripe, but also in the background, he has these X's back here. I just think this is so bold of him, you know, like in a world where everybody's trying to make their art look like League of Legends type illustrations and things like that. He's just doing all sorts of really wild, creative stuff. And yeah, that's pretty much all it is that I got for us today. I've got another podcast coming out this week, so please stay tuned for that. Every Friday, I'm interviewing different independent creatives on this channel. Some of them are authors. Most of them are illustrators and artists, people that are making comic books and things like that. But I also like to interview game developers and writers and graffiti artists and different people just to give us some inspiration for when we go into the next week or into the weekend. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Please feel free to subscribe and hit the notification bell. And drop a comment if there's somebody you'd like for me to look at. All right, guys, take it easy.